Good morning, everybody. Hello and welcome to everyone joining us in person and online. My name is Anderson Curtis, and I am the organizer for the ACLU of Connecticut's Rise PAC. I am joined here at the ACLU affiliate in Hartford today by colleagues and supporters from the League of Women Voters and League of Conservation Voters. But we're not only in Hartford today. Today, Rise PAC is showing up everywhere. We're in Hartford, we're in Stamford, Willimantic in Eastern Connecticut. We're in Bridgeport, and we're online. Throughout the state, we are joined by colleagues and supporting organizations. We are everywhere. Why? Together, we rise for voting rights. Connecticut voters deserve to know they have a chance to expand their civil rights and liberties. You have the power to vote yes. This November, no excuse absentee voting. On the ballot is a referendum to amend the state constitution to allow people to vote absentee ballot without an excuse. There are many reasons a person needs access to absentee voting. There are single parents with several jobs. There are wheelchair users or people who are compromised immune systems that don't have easy access to their voting location. In rural communities, there could be transportation barriers. People with childcare duties often can't spend hours and hours in line at the poll. But you shouldn't need a reason. You shouldn't need an excuse to vote absentee. Last year, more than 320 bills were introduced in legislatures across the country to restrict voting access. This year, you have the power to expand voting access in Connecticut. You shouldn't have to justify why you need to request an absentee ballot. You should be able to vote early, and you should be able to vote in person or by mail. More than half the country has no excuse absentee voting access. Why is Connecticut so far behind the curve? Connecticut should be a national leader in the voting rights space. ACLU Rise PAC isn't playing this partisan game in this election. We have one goal: pass the ballot referendum in November. No matter who you are, you deserve to have as much access to voting as your fellow Americans. This is also a racial justice issue. We know that when voting access is restricted, Black and brown people are more likely to see their voices silenced at the polls and in the halls of power. Restrictions on voting means restricting the civil rights and liberties of the very people who should be encouraged to participate in democracy. There's no excuse. Vote yes or on absentee, no excuse absentee voting. Your vote is on the ballot in November. Register to vote. Get a plan to vote. Vote yes in November. Today, we rise for voting rights. I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Patricia, for the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Anderson. I'm Patricia Rossi. I'm the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Connecticut. The League of Women Voters believes that our democracy, our nation, is stronger when everyone participates, when everyone votes. People shouldn't have to work around demanding and changing work schedules, caretaker responsibilities, unreliable transportation to exercise their right to vote. Connecticut needs to join the modern world and provide all eligible voters access to the absentee ballot. It's what's good for America, it's what's good for Connecticut, and it's what's fair.
Thank you, Patricia. And now I'll be joined by my colleague from the League of Conservation Voters, Juliana.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Juliana. I'm the Climate Policy and Outreach Coordinator from the League of Conservation Voters. CTLCV is a nonpartisan statewide nonprofit working to give the environment a voice at our capital. We are an environmental organization, but we also stand up for voting rights and democracy. We champion environmental issues, but we understand the deep connections between climate change and access to the ballot. We know that worsening climate impacts from wildfires to severe flooding, sea level rises affect not just our environment, but our ability to participate in democracy. These climate disasters make it harder for people to travel, including to polling places, and complicate efforts to ensure that every vote is counted. Voting should be accessible to all, especially in the face of these challenges. Failing to address the systemic nature of climate change, which affects most vulnerable communities in Connecticut, will undoubtedly impact voter turnout and civic engagement. This is why passing the No Excuse Absentee Ballot initiative is so vital, ensuring that every eligible voter can cast their ballot regardless of circumstance. It's a step forward to a more inclusive and resilient democracy. A vote for this democracy reform is a vote for climate action. We need to make it easier and not harder for people to vote, especially as climate change continues to pose significant barriers for all of us. Let us not forget that climate action and democratic participation go hand in hand. The communities who face the biggest barriers to voting are the same communities that are the most severely impacted by climate change. This November, we at CTLCV ask you to take a stand for our environment and our democracy by supporting no excuse absentee voting. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next up, we will hear from Amber and other supporters in Stamford.
Thank you so much, Anderson. And thanks to all of the folks who are out there on our 4-location simulcast and those joining us online. Good morning from the ACLU of Connecticut office in Stamford. We're happy to join in today with all of these great coalition partners from all around the state. It really takes engaged citizens and advocates who can rise to the occasion to champion voting rights here in Connecticut. So let's take a little look at the data. No excuse absentee voting is allowed in 35 states. Connecticut voters can choose to catch up with much of the rest of the country. That's on the ballot in November. No excuse absentee voting is nonpartisan. Research from the University of Virginia and BYU found that there are no partisan benefits to no excuse absentee voting. People strongly favor the expansion of voting rights access, and no excuse absentee voting is popular with people of all political leanings. All voters deserve no excuse absentee voting. Requiring an excuse for absentee voting can hurt qualified voters from participating because of their income status, geography, ability to secure transportation, disability status, or simply because they're a caregiver or a person with a family. We know that lack of voting access disproportionately affects regular people, communities of color, people with disabilities, and rural voters who may not have access to in-person voting because it's difficult to find a ride to the polls. I'm a busy mom living in a more rural area with a family member living with a military-connected disability, and voting is hard enough. I'm voting yes on no excuse absentee voting in November, and your vote is on the ballot. So now I'd like to introduce Christine Goldhop from the League of Women Voters here in Stamford.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters of Stamford would like to thank the ACLU for inviting us here today to speak about this important voter initiative. This year, Connecticut voters have the opportunity to approve a constitutional change to allow for no excuse absentee ballots. Almost 3/4 of the states in DC offer no excuses absentee ballots or mail-in voting. It is time for Connecticut to join the majority of states in offering a no excuses absentee ballot. The League of Women Voters of Connecticut believes that the political process must be open to all citizens. To achieve this goal, we support the principle that absentee voting privileges should be available to all voters. We know from other states that have adopted the no excuses absentee ballot that voter turnout increases, especially in local and state elections. This increase cuts across party lines, benefiting voters from all walks of life. Here in Stamford, we have a diverse electorate from shift workers and commuters who are technically in the city during some voting hours, but not able to actually get to the polling location due to their work schedule, to senior citizens for whom transportation to a polling location is a problem, and many others for whom a no excuses absentee ballot would provide access to voting that our current rules prevent. Personally, my parents moved to Florida almost 2 decades ago from Connecticut. After their first federal election, standing in long lines to vote, they looked into the no excuse absentee ballot rules in Florida. They signed up for it and have been getting their ballot mailed to them for each election ever since. Talking with my father recently, he said having access to the ballot in time to actually look it over, research candidates and issues before filling it out was an advantage that he felt everyone should have. The majority of Americans have this advantage through their access to no excuses absentee ballots or mail-in voting. Connecticut has been in the minority for too long, with an untold number of potential voters left on the sidelines. This November, voters have the opportunity to fix this problem by voting yes on the constitutional amendment to allow for no excuses absentee ballots.
Thank you so much, Christine. And now we're going to go to Eastern Connecticut to Gus Marks Hamilton.
Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be here right now. My name is Gus, like Amber said. We're at the Willimantic Chamber of Commerce and Veterans Center here in Willimantic. I'm with Leah Rawls from the Windham branch of the NAACP, and I'm with Asia Thornton from the League of Conservation, who you're going to hear from in just a minute. I grew up one town over in Mansfield, so it's fantastic to be here in Willimantic. And one of the reasons we're here is because too often it feels like the eastern part of the state, the eastern half of the state, gets overlooked sometimes. And that's not right, because you deserve the right to vote early if you so choose, and to vote in a way that is accessible to you. And that's why voting yes to no excuse absentee voting in November is so important. No excuse absentee voting guarantees everyone the freedom to vote and eradicates barriers to participating in elections and civic life. No excuse absentee voting is effective, it is safe, and it is critical to building strong communities everywhere so that people can participate in their own futures. More than half of states already offer no excuse absentee voting, so when more people have more chances to make their voices heard through expanded access to the ballot, it strengthens democracy for all of us. Let me add this final piece. No one should have to explain why they request an absentee ballot. No one should have to explain why they're available to be in person at a polling location in a specific time period. As a voter, you should never need an excuse to vote. Even though Connecticut is the land of steady habits, we are fortunate that voters will finally have the freedom to choose how they want to vote in November. Now I'm going to turn the mic over to Asia Thornton from the League of Conservation Voters.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Asia Thornton. I'm the communications coordinator for the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters. As an organization who champions for the environment, we also champion for democracy. We understand the deep connections between climate change and access to the ballot. We know that worsening climate impacts, from devastating wildfires to severe flooding and rising sea levels, affect not just our environment, but also our ability to participate in democracy. These climate disasters make it harder for people to travel in polling places and complicate efforts to ensure that every vote is counted. Voting should be accessible to all, especially in the face of these challenges. There is no time to waste in fighting climate change. Failing to address the systemic nature of climate change, which disproportionately affects most vulnerable communities, will undoubtedly impact voter turnout and civic engagement. This is why passing no excuse absentee ballot initiative is so vital. Ensuring that every eligible voter can cast their ballot regardless of circumstance is a step towards a more inclusive and resilient democracy. A vote for this democracy reform is a vote for climate action. We need to make it easier, not harder, for people to vote, especially as climate change continues to pose significant barriers for all of us. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Asia. And I'm going to invite up Leah Rawls from the Windham branch of the NAACP.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank RISE for inviting the NAACP to be a part of this initiative. As you know, historically, the NAACP supports the right to vote. Voting rights came through our ancestors, and a lot of them actually died fighting for our right to vote. We support the initiative for voting and no excuse absentee ballot voting. We support the RISE organization and everything that they're doing to get the message out. And we also will carry this message to our community to encourage early voting. Please get out and vote. On the ballot will be a question. Answer yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. And now we're going to throw it over to Erica in Bridgeport.
Good morning from Bridgeport. My name is Erika Ortiz, and I'm with the ACLU of Connecticut Rise PAC. We're here on the steps of City Hall in Bridgeport to encourage voters and throughout the state to vote yes on the ballot referendum in November. We will have events in your area throughout this election cycle, and we're excited to share those with you in the coming months. Today, we wanted to be in Bridgeport to stand up for civil rights and liberties, to champion safe, effective voting access and practices. When historically divested communities vote, we can change our government and our world. I'm here today to tell you that it's important for our people to show up and show out this November, y'all. Real justice requires it all. Communicating, organizing, showing up, lots more than just voting. But this year, your vote is on the ballot. It's crucial to register to vote, make a plan to vote, and to vote yes on the ballot referendum. Talk with your community about why expanding voting rights matters, your friends, your family. Make your voice and your choice heard loud and very clear. Together, we rise and go farther. Together, we rise for dignity. Together, we rise for voting rights. Together, we rise for voting. Thank you. Anderson will kick us off to end it back in Hartford.
Thank you, Erica. ACLU Connecticut's Rise PAC wants to thank you all for tuning in and joining us for our first ever simulcast. I'd like to thank Mr. Tommy Battle for joining me here at the podium for Full Citizens Coalition. Would you like to say something, Tommy?
No.
Okay. Okay. Our community partners and our phenomenal people and organizations that can co-create our shared futures and help to improve our democracy every day. We're all over the state today in support of you as a voter. Vote yes or no excuse absentee balloting in November. Together we rise. Together we rise. Together we rise for voting rights. Thank you.